What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. It's no secret that League of Legends lore is pretty terrible. Nobody cares about it and it's quite frankly a mess at the moment. And I'm the kind of guy who really enjoys lore in a game, so it's an unfortunate thing to see and it's like that way for quite a few reasons. Let's get started. Now, the most common reason people probably think of as to why the lore sucks is that it's because League is a PvP game only, and making people care about lore in a PvP only game is quite difficult, since lore is something that is pretty much always associated with PvE content rather than PvP content. And if you think about it, when was the last time a game that was PvP only came out that had both interesting lore and solid gameplay? I certainly can't think of one, but I don't think that's a fault of the PvP genre. Just because League is a PvP game doesn't mean you can't create an interesting story and interactions around the world and characters. It just means that the story has to be told in a different way. If we take a look at a game like World of Warcraft, who is known for having pretty solid lore, a big reason of why their lore is so good, or at least why it was so good, is because as you adventure through their world, the short mentions that you get to see of the iconic characters builds up into a huge interaction with them as an end goal of the game, when you eventually get to fight them later on for some epic loot. That end goal of an interaction with the characters adds a lot of meaning to the short snippets that you encounter while questing, which combo together to give you a nice sense of feeling for the world and is something that really gets you interested in the characters in a way that works really well, despite not actually having them be a huge part of the experience during your average day of gameplay. And so getting people to have that initial interest that then builds up into something else is really important, but has to be done a lot differently. And whether your game is PvP or PvE focused, to make the lore interesting, it's really important to have the lore interact with the gameplay in some way. And both of these things are something that League fails to do. Now on paper that might seem nearly impossible to do in a PvP only game, but I don't think that's true at all. Interactions with the characters and the map can create quite interesting stories and at least entice players enough to follow up outside of the game, as well as things like the more recent Bilgewater event has shown us that you can have lore interact with gameplay in some way by giving players a story that progresses through their own gameplay, as well as you can use the rewards that you give to players as somewhat of an end goal for them to work towards. I'm sure that there are more ways to do it as well, and so creating good lore in a PvP game is definitely not impossible, it's just a lot harder, and more specifically has to be done a lot differently. The Bilgewater event in particular is a pretty interesting one, as for many it was the first thing lore-wise that has actually garnered interest, and I think it was a good step in the right direction, but there were a few major mistakes with the event. If there's anything I learned from my time playing MMOs about content, it's that unless you give meaningful rewards, nobody's really going to care about the content at all. I mean, how many people do you think would actually care about killing Arthas or Illidan if they didn't give any loot whatsoever? Certainly not as many players, and something like a summoner icon is quite lackluster and is going to make a large majority of people really just not care at all, since they have no incentive to even think about it in the first place. We as players are quite reward driven in what we do, and so it's tough to make us want to do anything without offering a nice light at the end of the tunnel, something to look forward to, and I think giving meaningful rewards would make these lore events that are already fairly well designed a lot more successful as a whole, and would actually improve the lore drastically. Another thing is that lore interactions with the game itself aren't really that common, or at least they weren't in the past. There's been a lot more popping up recently here and there, but champion interactions with things like taunts and what they say, as well as things as simple as an attack, are really cool to see. And maybe they don't tell the story all by themselves, but they are something that definitely piques the player's interest about the interaction. That would make them more interested in the story for sure. As well, making the lore easier to digest in the client would help a lot. Right now we kind of just get a big wall of text about the story of the champion, but things like comics and cutscenes and really just more organized lore in the client would certainly go a long way. On the other hand, a surprisingly big part of why I think the lore sucks is due to a lack of fan and community involvement. Fan content is actually one of the best parts of lore in a game, since it really gets people to talk about and share the stories, as well as the community gets to create their own stories about the game, and most content creators, myself included, would tend to stray away from making content about the lore because we think that no one really cares about it. But if we take a look at some of the content involving lore on YouTube, I don't think that's actually true. League of Legends Lore in a Minute, a video that breaks down the lore in a way that is easy to digest and is a very enjoyable video and is certainly lore driven, has over 4.5 million views. As well, Falcon Shield makes a series called This Is War, where they make a song about two of the factions in League battling it out through their lyrical prowess, and is another set of videos that is definitely lore focused, but is also extremely successful, garnering millions and millions of views on each episode, and is arguably one of the best fan-made pieces of content about League of Legends in existence. Anyways, there are more examples, but the point is that there is proof that people can be interested in the lore and the content surrounding it. So it's not that the lore sucks because no one cares about it, it's that most people don't care about the lore because it sucks. And the perception that the community thinks that no one cares about the lore is a pretty big deal because it stops people from wanting to make content about the lore, despite the fact that it could be quite successful if made well, as some videos have been in the past. And so overall the potential for the lore to not suck is most certainly there, and with the Bilgewater event being a great step in the right direction at least, as well as the community starting to think that the lore is improving, I'm looking forward to the future as for what is going to happen. And that just about wraps it up. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to tap that like button to help support me, as well as you can check out some of the other videos on the screen too. And definitely make sure to subscribe for some more awesome content in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.